Or 7:30 your time. I'm behind.
I know. Ignore me. All right, it's time. It's time. So it is 1 minute before, but I guess because we started it, it automatically, the clock ticks on it. But yeah, Facebook world only gives us 7 minutes to like talk, which I if we don't start the live, it, I guess, cancels it. We figured that out. So you guys are learning something new if you're just watching this.
All new.
Yeah.
Like 7:30, it lost people come in.
Yeah. Yep. So there's 3 people with us. Hi guys. When you get here, give us your name and what state or whatever you're calling in from, or joining us from. Not calling in today anyway. Tiffany's with us today.
Hi, Tiffany.
Thanks for being new with us. You know, it's such a huge thing to have you joining like live, because this is probably the most nerve-wracking thing that people know. Not everybody knows. Not everybody knows how much it takes. Actually, I know a lot of people here on the YouTube world that they post videos like clockwork, but the moment you ask them to do something live, they're like, no, no, thank you. Just because, you know, you can always correct things like we were talking about, right? Like constantly re-recording and feeling like it doesn't sound right. And so losing that opportunity, it definitely gets a little nerve-wracking. So, all right, guys, so we are here. We moved the day to Wednesday. That was the winner on the votes, Wednesday at 7:30, and it happened to work out beautifully. So thank you guys for shifting that. Yeah, thank you for the voting. And I still left the polls open because, like I said, basically we'll just continue to just get your feedback if we find that days work better, especially as you guys are joining that community page. It'll help us get a better sense of what exactly your schedule looks like. And so when we add other events or things that we want to make sure we keep you plugged into, we will make sure to put it on a day that works for you so that we can actually have you guys here. So, so we're gonna just, hey, hi Lee, how's it going? Good to see you again. So we have Tiffany here. Tiffany, welcome to the Medical Billers Network Live. Tiffany and I have been working together for a lot of years now, which is, I don't know how many, 7?
No, I think it's only been like 5.5. It'll be 6.
Really?
Yeah.
6, okay. Well, yeah. Feels like you've been here my whole life, like the whole life of the company anyway. So happy to have you here, and excited that you would like take this chance with us and do live with us. Yay. And then, you know, tonight's conversation, what I want us to talk about, this is like a topic that we get questions about a lot because people aren't sure where they should start. Hey, Liz, welcome. Good to see you again. If you guys are just joining, give us a little comment. Let us know that you're here and tell us where you're dialing in from. I'll say that in air quotes. I got to figure out another word for that, I guess.
Where are you watching live?
Yeah, where are you streaming from, I guess? Yeah. Doesn't sound as sexy, right? Doesn't it? So what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So the conversation around working for a medical billing company versus working for a practice and the differences. And I think, you know, we can talk a little bit about like our journeys and stuff from the medical. I know Dumfries.
Yeah, another Virginia lady.
Yes, VA. Yeah, Tiffany's in VA too. We actually I used to live outside of DC in Northern Virginia, close to Dumfries, but Fairfax. So you probably know that area, Liz.
I actually used to live in Stafford. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Right. Stafford. I have a friend who just moved there. Christy. Hi, Christy.
Yeah. Hi, Christy.
Welcome. It's nice to see your name. Maybe one day we'll see you. We'll trick you and have you come on live or something. Be like, just join our meeting. We're just having a chat. Uh-oh, Tanya, did we lose you for a sec? Sorry about that.
Something is going on in Texas with internet. It's been a problem for 2 days, and they cannot figure out what is happening.
Everything is different in Texas.
Everything is different in Texas.
Just
everything. Apparently, we have our own power grid, our own electric grid. Like We are not a part of the U.S. If anybody tells you that, they are not telling the truth.
You know what's funny? Oh, Liz, you're born in Fairfax. I love it. So you know what's funny is that like I know more people right now in Texas than I ever have in my life. Like I'm, with us connected to Renee. I have other people, all the guys from the Level team, like all these folks that I'm connected to. And then every time I'm meeting somebody lately, it's like, oh, I just met two more people yesterday that are in Houston. I'm like, and then, it's just constantly, I think I probably have like 25 people or so in my world right now that are fairly new to me that are all from Texas. So I'm just made to connect with you Texans. I don't know what that's about.
And that's where my son is right now. So.
Oh yes, he's still down in San. Where is he again? Remind me the area. El Paso. How close is that to you?
From me, that's 8 hours. That's on the other side of Texas. I'm in the middle. That's still 8 hours away.
Oh, God, everything is like 8 hours from me. Like it's like and you're still in the same state. 8 hours. I could get to Florida. Like I could get to Disney from here, or I could be in New York or like Jersey. I think from here. Mm-hmm. So, or maybe not that far. Maybe Philly, because I think it's like 10 hours to New York. Anyway, I totally digress, you guys. All right, so. Yeah, so today we're talking about working for a billing company versus a practice. And so it's been a long time for me since I've worked directly for a practice. But I remember it. It's interesting. You like never forget the experience. I actually started in healthcare, like not working. I was volunteering. I joke around, I was like the candy striper, but they don't wear candy striper outfits when I volunteer. So I volunteered at hospitals and including NIH as well, all before I started like working in healthcare. So I enjoyed National Institutes of Health. Those of you who don't know what that is, because I don't really like to use acronyms without defining them. At least it's one of those like little pet peeves, because people that don't speak our language, they feel so lost. But yeah, so I started doing that first, and that was probably administratively, like that experience. It's a totally different one than when you're working. Obviously outside of any environment, because they just are using, you got all these kind of blended responsibilities. So you're doing whatever they need you to do, right? Not just as a candy striper, but even as a biller sometimes. Or at least that was my initial, you're like, oh, we're pausing today. We've got to, do this other function. It's recall day and everyone, all hands on deck to call patients or whatever. And so my experience as a biller in a practice probably lasted collectively about 4 years, just doing primarily billing, because I started out doing marketing and front desk and all these other things. So just underneath my own kind of relationship with the providers and doing billing. And then I moved into admin. Like I think I've mentioned to the community before that I moved into practice administration, and I had a biller. She hated me. I'm not going to lie. She was a biller. She was a billing manager. And actually, Tiffany knows who Mitty is. I met Mitty at this practice, and the person who was the head biller, she wasn't really a billing manager per se. She hated me because I was literally 1/3 her age. So she didn't like that very much, that I was her boss. So it was a very uncomfortable situation. And I really, really liked her, and I wanted us to work well together. She didn't like that. So so my experience was different, moving in through like the billing world. I did work for a large group ENT practice that had allergy and other things. But it was I think of it as a little different, because it was so large that we really kind of operated in our own little pod. Like we were still basically like a billing company. We were just a billing department. We even had our own floor. So like the main practice was on the one floor below us, and the billing department took up the whole floor above. So very rarely did we do a whole lot of interacting with the providers. Like it would just be, this once every few weeks that they would come up for a meeting or something with the billing manager, who essentially doubled also as like the CFO. So, and I was her assistant. And so I would see them at that time, but really wouldn't deal with them very much. And sometimes they would come up to talk to the coders, which was always a fun little thing, because the coders they get like the typewriter comes in and they're like, oh my gosh, we always joke around that, like it's a little intimidating when a provider comes to you and you're a coder and what they're there for. Like you did something different that they don't like, or, whatever. So, so that's been that's my journey into it. And then I'll talk a little bit about like some of the major differences from my perspective. So, Tiffany, you want to tell your like experience? You don't have to talk full detail, but how long you've worked in a practice with the billing department versus working for a billing company?
Well, this is my first experience with a billing company. I've pretty much only been in practices since pretty much I graduated high school, so for several years. And so this is different for me because we're dealing with different softwares, different specialties, where when you're in an office, it's just one, whether like for me and Christy, we did mental health, originally for a long time. And then we both went out and I went to orthopedics, but it still was just one thing. So being with a billing company, you definitely learn more different specialties, codings, insurance, regards and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you spent a lot of years in a practice. Well, we can talk about like the vote, no negative, like no wrong answer, I should say. Like, we'll be able to vote like which one was more exciting for us, like time to time. Tanya, what about you?
So my journey and your journey, guys, Jasmine and I laugh a lot because our lives are parallel. I swear we are the separated twins from birth. So from a young age, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I did the Health Occupation Students of America.
Oh my God, so did I. I love it.
Yes. So I was
all time.
Yeah.
This is so awesome.
And I was a candy striper too, but I wanted to be a neonatologist. So I worked in NICU for my candy striping and, got to hold the little babies and, make sure they had the skin to skin. Wonderful. Have a thing with sniffing babies. That's a whole nother story. And life's journey, I married, my husband went in the military. We had kids. I put all my dreams on hold because we went overseas. So, and after having my oldest, I couldn't, like the sight of blood, everything just changed my whole physiological dynamic. So I'm like, okay, no doctor for me. Can't, I'm a mommy now, can't deal with the parents of these kids. Like I just can't. So whole physiological, like just change. So I'm like, can't do a dentist, can't do this. I was stuck for years. I knew I wanted to work in medicine, just didn't know the roadmap, right? We moved to Texas. My neighbor says, hey, there's a startup. I need help in the medical billing department. I'm like, the who? What? What is that? She's like, come, it's administrative. You'll like it. I promise you'll like it. And I'm like, okay, what's the pay? Right? Because that's everything everybody says. What's the pay?
Yeah. How much?
So it took me from driving an hour and it was a $2 bump. So I'm like, it's a win-win. They weren't necessarily a practice. It was home health. So I'm like, okay, this is fun. I want to explore more. And I went to a job interview and I'll never forget the guy told me, he was like, well, you need 4 E's to make it in this business. And I'm like, 4 E's? What are you talking about? He was like, well, to evolve, you need to evolve with education, experience, and expertise. He was in home health, learning that.
I like that, Tanya. We should coin it.
He's like, you've done this for 7 years and that's all you have. That's the only thing you know. That he's like, get out, experience other things. And I did. I started my own company because I'm like, nobody else is going to tell me that I don't have experience and I'm not evolved. So I went from working for a practice to working for myself and learning other parts of medical billing essentially on my own. I haven't worked in like a traditional hospital or pediatrics office or anything like that. So that has been my journey.
I love it. And it's so funny, like you said, ours are very parallel because the practice I described, that the ENT practice I worked at, because I was basically the right hand of the billing manager. And I recognized that, between she and the other, basically it was like the very top of the food chain, basically. And I'm like, they're not going anywhere. Like, they are too deeply connected. And so this is it for me. Like, I had about 2 or 3 scenarios, and this happens sometimes, where I came into the office of the head boss and said, here's, some things that I've noticed and some trends and whatever. And, my boss, I should say, my direct supervisor, and she took that to the CFO, like, as her idea. And I was like, and that happened a couple of times over again. It was like, not at that time, I was all in my head about it, right? This is, I was young. And so I was like, okay, how do I circumvent this? And I tried one last time, and I couldn't get out of, basically, from under her shadow. And so I said, okay, this is not where I want to be, right? Yeah. So, hey guys, if you're just joining, put in the chat where you're calling in from or joining us from. I'm going to get that right. I love your questions, you guys. This is my favorite part, by the way, is when you guys ask questions. So if you're just joining and you see the subject today, we're talking about the differences, or the good and bad between working for a billing company or a practice directly. And we're not biased. I think we've had really good times in both. Like, for me, I'd probably say I really enjoyed the smaller practice where I could have a little bit more a connection with the patients, not necessarily being in a large practice where I was in a billing department, because I felt personally that I was limited. Like, there wasn't anywhere else to move at some point, and unless you were going to move into clinical, which didn't make any sense. There's not really a parallel to that, right? So, so if you're just joining, pop in the chat, let us know that you're here. You can tell us where you're joining us from, your city or state, whatever you feel comfortable with. And I'm going to look at our questions.
I have to say too, Jasmine, for me, I'm that petty person, how you're talking about the lady took your idea and presented it. I think the turning point for me on the level petty, petty level president, was when they brought in the temp, because we had grown so large in this particular. They brought in a temp, I trained her, and then she became my boss.
Wow. All right.
Yes. So for me, that was the catalyst. And I think having the gentleman, when I went for the interview, tell me, like, you've hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
There's no upward mobility. So yeah.
For sure. And I do like that, from a perspective of encouragement, if he said those words to you, but it sounded like it was more like a, yeah,
It really wasn't, because after the interview, we sat there and we talked for another hour. And it really was a place of fellowship.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, like, you're not a great fit for this company, but let me tell you how to excel, because I think you have potential. You don't think you have potential.
Well, that's
and he's spot on. So I've taken that. Everything I do, I'm thinking about these E's in my head.
I like it. I love those E's. I mean, that's what my perspective is. We've talked about that at great length, especially in this space, you guys. We've talked about the weight of experience and education, and choosing to really take both, moving forward through your career, and not just allowing yourself to die out. You've got to continue to be hungry. I think I even said the Les Brown way, you got to be hungry. I always hear that. Every time I say that, I hear his voice. Okay. So do both sides talk to patients about billing?
Yes.
Yes, Tiffany, what would you say?
Yes, we do talk to the patients. They'll call us, or the office will suggest that we call them to explain their bills to them, or the balances, or anything like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think safe to say there's probably no way to avoid it, unless you're doing something like you pick a larger company that you're just doing data processing for, like payment posting or something like that. You may not be, called upon to pick up the phone when a patient calls in. But most billing companies is kind of a shared responsibility managing patient calls, and depending upon, of course, the experience of the people. But most billing companies, actually, some of them, when they return their patients' calls, unfortunately, billing companies have a bad rap sometimes in this area of responsiveness with patients' calls. And we, thank the Lord, do not have that problem. Our team is phenomenal at making sure the calls get, patients get what they need. Obviously, there's a purpose for a call if a patient's calling in, and it usually is going to move something forward in the revenue cycle, which is what we want, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky thing when you find, like I just had a call with another potential client just yesterday evening, and the conversation went basically in that direction. The reason why they're looking elsewhere is because they work with a company that they can't even get a call back directly. So it's like they're clients and they can't even get the call, let alone the patients, and they're doing the patient billing. And here's the concerning part for me is that their specialty is urgent care. And those of you who know urgent care, there's a lot of patient billing involved in urgent care. So it's like, wait a minute, nobody's answering questions, no one's picking up the phone. That sounds like a disaster. So yeah, I think that is actually valuable when you work with the practice that lets you talk to patients. We've had relationships in the past, thankfully nobody now, but in the past where we always had to go directly to the practice. So for example, if a patient's insurance information isn't matching, it makes sense. It really behooves us to be the ones to want to call the patients and get it clarified. Otherwise, you're just like, trying to play telephone. You're telling the front desk or somebody else to call and ask this, and then it gets back to you and you're like, oh, we already had that card on file. We need the other card, so it's just a bit of a mess. You get the whole messenger hang up there. So yeah, I like when we have the ability, and in short, like the whole purpose is us to be able to support the healing of the patient. So I think it just makes sense that once they've gotten past the front end of the folks in the revenue cycle, providers and front desk, the patient should also move around with us. They should come along, and now we're the ones who work with them, So do you have other things to add to that, guys? The question, just to repeat it, is, do both sides talk to patients about their billing?
Yeah.
Anything?
I think sometimes, like you said, it just depends on how if you're in a private practice or even a billing company, what the job duties, the roles are on whether you're going to have to talk to those patients a lot as a biller. If you're working denial management, maybe not as much, but definitely both sides, you're going to talk to the patient.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, is most companies or even practices that's not gonna be your first responsibility. So if you're worried about it, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because it pains everybody when somebody gets on the phone and then kind of miscommunicates reasons for balances or things like that. So I think most, and I shouldn't say maybe most, of those that I know, that's usually one of the last things they want to hand off to a new person, because it's a trust thing, just to make sure that you're able to communicate well and you understand. And especially in a billing company environment, and we'll talk about that, but software, getting acclimated to different software environments or in different like a new specialty or something like that, all of that can slow down your learning. So it's absolutely valuable to move with a bit more awareness, just to like where the person is in their knowledge, versus just giving them the ability to talk to all the patients and miscommunicate. So very good. Thank you, Lee. Okay, so which one usually pays better in our opinions, practices or billing companies? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I would probably say that, like, ultimately the variable would mostly be depending on the size of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like a smaller practice where there's just one or two providers, is not going to pay the same as a practice that's, large group that has compensation packages in place where they say, okay, you've been here for these number of years. This is the ceiling. This is for that role. And, here's your opportunity for getting promoted to a different role, and the requirements, they really define them better versus a smaller business that they just can afford what they can afford for that position. And they may not take you any further as far as compensation goes. So I would say that it's mostly size dependent and less, because even billing companies, you really, the potential can be the same, the size, whether if they're smaller or larger. And in both environments, the same thing matters. If the practice is larger or the billing company is a little larger or has the potential for growth, then there's opportunity for advancement, which would mean you would start with, like we talked about, if you're doing data processing today, but then you start to learn AR, or you start to learn, some denial management, or, things that really start to add more value to the organization, they then may promote you to a different function or a different role. And then you might even have a supervisor management role available to you as well. If it's a small practice, you might have like one or two positions available to you. So awesome. Do you have anything to add to that, either one of you? That's just my thinking about the size. But
no, that is completely spot on. It really is small versus large on either side is going to be dependent upon what your price is going to be, because more than likely the experience is still going to be, the requirement of experience is still going to be the same. It's just going to be, are you looking at a smaller practice, or the size of it is really going to matter for that. So definitely agree.
Awesome. Let me see. Liz, I have a situation. She'd like our advice. Doctor at her current job says she wants me to start helping with billing, but the supervisor acts like she's mad about having to train me. Supervisor is a billing supervisor, Liz? So the person that's in charge of billing? I would assume so, but let us know in the comments when you get a second. Unfortunately, if it wasn't her idea, there can be a lot of that. And some of it is fear. It's that concept of like when someone's been around for a long time, it's kind of the hoarding of the function to say, as job security, they want to hang on to as much as they can. Yes, the billing. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things. So like if they think you have high potential, or like, she might look at you and think, whatever kind of opinion about your potential, and maybe be a little intimidated by it. And instead of supporting and mentoring, then it becomes a kind of negative push in the opposite direction. And that's, what do you guys have ideas on how to navigate that when someone doesn't want to help?
That one's a tough one. I would honestly say, take it with a grain of salt. I've seen this. And it doesn't matter if it's medical billing. It doesn't matter what field it is. I've seen this across the board, and it's fear of the unknown. Are you going to take my job? It's fear of maybe I did something and I got in trouble and now I have to train you, which means I'm going to lose my job. Overall, it's probably just fear. I really would start taking time in your off time to start studying everything you can about that job. If it's payment posting, learn how to do that. If it's denial management, learn how to do that. Do the things that you can learn how to do without her help. And then if you do have to ask her for any type of training, make sure that it's something that's easily documented or easily trackable, because at the end of the day, if the supervisor or the doctor is making this some type of requirement, and she doesn't want it, Jasmine will tell you, I am a very big advocate of covering your behind. So write it down, send an email. Hey, I learned how to do this. Is this the correct steps? Or, you know, and you don't have to come at it in a way that you really have to watch how you approach her with it, because if she's already seeming like she's mad about it, then there might be something to it that you don't know in the background. So, you know, just compassion, you know, oh, I'm sorry, supervisor, whatever your name is, you know, I know this is really stressful to take time out of your day to have to show me this. Can we just take it slow? I just have this one question, and send it in an email. But other than that, you know, humans, we operate out of fear of, you know, some type of redemption on her side that you might not know the background business to. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that care and compassion goes a long way, even if, you know, she might not have that kind of response, or she may not respond well to you. So, you know, kind of giving her that encouragement that you really want to help, and that you know, authentically are there to kind of be a part of the solution, like collectively. That's going to be a better way to approach it, because ultimately she is in charge, right? Or, you know, the boss, right? So she has weight in the decision. And this is not to say that this would ever happen in your situation, but I've seen in the past where other people have been involved in sabotaging opportunities for people. So like, if, you know, they be mistraining you or something, teaching you something incorrectly to, you know, have you then make an error that is something that costs you your job. So just be very mindful, and just make sure that you're moving into this with a place of like, out of respect and compassion, and you want to be a part of the solution, and have her hopefully start to see that, your eagerness to learn and help. And then, like Tanya said, I love that advice to just push forward as much as you can without making it feel like she has to work so hard, because some of it is also time. You know, it's like, oh, somebody else, and you don't know, maybe I don't know what the history is. Like, if you, you know how, if this person's been there for a long time, your supervisor, and she's had 5 or 6 recommendations in the last, you know, couple of years, who knows, from this other, you know, from this provider, like I would just be sensitive to that. Like, it could be a situation where it's like, oh gosh, another one, you know, like where she just feels like stressed out with another, you know, another weight on her shoulders, and nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, Jasmine, if she has trained people in the past, maybe they've used that training to go find a job somewhere else, and now it's compiled all of that work back on her. So there could be multiple levels of the frustration.
Oh yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Unfortunately, supervisors, you know, they bear the brunt whenever things don't quite go right and as planned. And so it can be a lot of pressure. Very good point. Yeah. Yes. And is it Bhaskar? I hope I'm saying that right. Bhaskar. Thank you. So Bhaskar's complimenting you.
Thank you, Bhaskar. I appreciate it.
Hopefully we're saying your name right. Maybe you could send us one of those pronunciations. What do you call those? The little pronunciation guide. Let me know how to say it right. I'm sorry. I want to know how to say it right. This is the one thing about, like, I was gonna say LinkedIn, YouTube. That's a little bit like, because whenever we're on Clubhouse, we'll be like, come on stage and just like tell us how to say your name, because we just need to know so we don't keep calling you the wrong name. So hopefully we were close. You're welcome, Liz. Let us know if you ever have questions like that. That's what this community is for. So, and you know, we may not have all the perfectly, beautifully presented, eloquent answers, but we have ideas of what might work for you, and we could just give you our opinions, right? So I love it. I love that you're asking. So,
Did we touch on Lee's question about the responsibilities between the two?
Oh, no, I missed that.
And then I believe Amy's question also.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Yes, Lee, do billers have more responsibilities in practices versus billing companies?
I don't know. I mean, because I've only worked for one and one. So
yeah, Tiffany's probably the best one to answer that.
I feel like they're kind of the same. I mean, you know, like right now I am working on insurance AR, my responsibilities with the billing company or the practice is the same thing. I mean, ultimately, we want to get that claim paid. So, making phone calls, doing appeals, things like that. So I don't think there's one responsibility more at one location or the other.
Yeah, I think sometimes with like in a practice setting, just like any other business, when they need all hands on deck, you might have to go into other programs. So like, for example, this is the best example, is a lot of practices that are deploying that are focused on deploying vaccine distribution right now. They're looking to get vaccines out. A lot of them have just picked people from different departments to help with the process. And maybe it's like you rotate like a couple of days through the vaccine line, but there's people I've seen from all areas of the practice that are helping in some capacity, because there is a billing component, meaning like data capture and things like that in the vaccine line. So you might find yourself, pulled to other projects that just come up, right? That are pretty atypical. And that's obviously if you're on the ground at the practice, right? And that's probably one of the biggest differences that we think about responsibilities, is you are on the ground in a lot of practices. Even still, like I've seen a lot of practices return their billers back to the office, even though they moved them home, unless they repurposed the billing area. Like there were some places that repurposed the billing department to be an extension of like vaccine prep and stuff like that, just to have more space. But many organizations, people are going back to the office if they haven't already, or they did never go home. Like this just happened a lot. And so it's something to think about, that when you're physically in the space and there's like a, all hands on deck project or something that comes up, you're going to be pulled for that. And in a billing environment, I mean, there's projects that come up, but it's usually more related to what we do from day to day. So versus like if you're in the other side and your front desk person's out and like it's a small practice, maybe 3 to 5 people in the office, you're probably going to be the next person to cover the front desk if you're the biller. So just keep that in mind. Size of the practice would actually mean that you'd have more shared responsibility if you're there. Yeah, so that's a really good question. Really good question. And I do say the same thing maybe from the billing company perspective, but it's more specific to RCM. So like, for example, like Tiffany, if someone's out and there's some issue with claims, or perhaps there's just the team member who manages that function is on vacation or something, like she primarily is doing AR, but she could move to do something else, right? To help with claims, or to move into another function to support the billing company, but it's still billing related, versus where inside of the environment of a practice, things are a little bit skewed, we'll say. It's still part of the RCM, but not really directly billing service related. So I'm missing Amy's. Oh, here we go. Here's Amy's. Do you use your software as a billing company or the practice's software? Tiffany, you want to answer that question? This is the exciting part of the billing world now.
Yes, definitely the practice software. So we are dealing with several different softwares. So yeah, we have a way to log in directly to them. It's all, at the same time. So if I put in a note, then the office can see it right away, or if we're posting anything, everything's at real time.
Yeah.
There's another question too that kind of goes with it. Is it the software part you are facing challenges with, or in general, the billing process? For me personally, it's software. So it takes, payment posting, the EOBs are all going to look the same. You're going to apply adjustments, co-pays, things like that. AR, same thing. Something gets denied, it's the same process to get it paid. But it's the software personally that I find to be challenging, because some of them are, very friendly, and then others, just to do one little, correct a claim, it's 5 different steps to it,
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I would definitely say software. For sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we covered this a couple of weeks, or I don't know how many weeks ago it was, that we were talking about billing software. There's really not like a beautiful system right now. Like that does everything we want it to do billing wise. So it's like, if we could just have like an hour in the room with the software developer, we would give them our peace of mind because it's absolutely crazy. Some of the stuff that they're missing or like that are redundant. Like one of my things, that biggest annoyances is that we've got a software that has, and no names, that has like 5 or 6 different areas for notes. It's like one has things underneath the charges, and then there's underneath the patient, which is basically, it says patient info, but it's basically the patient's demographics area, right? It's like, why would that need its own notes? Then there's also one in the billing side, but separate from where you would go for the charge detail. And then there's one for the claim side. Like it's a bizarre thing. There's like notes, and that's, I'm sorry, just one patient. That is just notes under one patient file. And the issue for that is none of them talk to each other. So if somebody heard your training wrong and they start putting notes in one area of the software, and you're like, going in there, what's going on? And there's nothing been done. There's no documentation. And all of a sudden you find this, you open up the hood to the other notes area, and they're like, oh, I put all my notes over here instead. Like, what? So how we try to circumvent that is we create little like rules internally that say, okay, you're going to need to only put notes in this area so that everybody's clear. Because if, we aren't just the ones who need to understand it. Like if we told the practices they want to look at the status of a claim, they have a patient in front of them, they should be able to go to one place and see what the status is. We have to tell them, here's where you need to go. Everybody has to be on the same page. So yeah, software is a big pain in the butt. So this shifted when I first started my business. Did I have right away? Yeah, I started with Medisoft. That was my first system. Those of you who've been in healthcare long enough know Medisoft. Medisoft's been around forever. And it served the purposes. It did a great job. But the issue with Medisoft for me was that it was server-based. And so I wanted to and it did not have an EHR at that time. I know they have something now. I don't know if it's directly integrated or what. So I wanted to be able to offer a solution that would have the potential for an EHR or an integration seamless and so on. And so I moved into a totally different system that also had the plan to move to cloud. They did move to cloud, but it ended up not being to the way that we wanted. So we actually went with the system we talked about last time with the open practice solutions, because it gives us what we need as billers, and it actually has the ability to integrate. And it's a system. So the issue with software companies sometimes is that they start out saying, oh, no, we all we do is this, and we're agnostic. We work with, all billing companies. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, they have a billing department. So not only are they our software, but they're also our competitor. Like, that's weird. So it's just hard to promote a system when you're like, hey, go check out this tool. And then, your client's like, oh, you guys charge like more than the company. And not that it matters, because we have our own way of dealing with those kinds of objections, but it became like one of those things where everybody in the software business had to have a billing department, just because that was what was going on. That started to kind of fall away over the last couple of years, because they figured out that it's harder than they thought it was, because it's like running 2 different businesses, completely different businesses. So that's gotten better. But truly, the complexity that comes along with the current environment, like where people they commit so much. Like, so you think about this, the providers have invested so much during the big EHR incentive period. They spent so much money trying to move their practice forward, probably with an all-in-one solution. Most of them didn't go with just EHR. They went with a system that does both. So when they already paid for that, the idea that then they would move to a billing company that did not use their software became like, inconceivable. They're like, why would they do that, right? So in order to comply with that or to support it, basically billing companies, we all started we'll learn your software, we'll get in your environment. And, and I think we talked about this during that call, is we typically will evaluate the system. Sometimes you get surprises a few weeks, months down the road, where you're like, oh, it doesn't do that. well, okay then. But usually you can kind of look at the basics and just try to see if it has what you need to make sure you can perform a great function for them. But it's really, really important that you do that in advance. I think we stress that a lot because you're the one who's going to be having to answer for it at the end of the day, whether, if you agreed to it. And, we said, like, if you give them a trial and you're going to check it out for a little while, make sure the client is very clear that this is the trial period. I'm going to try to work with your system for the next 3 months or 6 months. But at the end of that, if I find that it's too challenging or it's not allowing me to do a great job for you, we got to move on, So, and then you have to go on to your other practice, basically, or to your other, billing company. So yeah, Oscar. Oh, we got it right. Awesome. Yay. I love it. We can call you Oscar. We'll call you Bashkar. Okay, I forgot how we said it. Did we say Bashkar? Bashkar. Now I forgot. Baksar.
So like Oscar with the B at the beginning. Baskar.
Okay. Baskar. Baskar. Baskar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I remember us saying it.
We're gonna get it right. Those of you who are just joining, I know that people are coming and going. This is the evening time for you guys. But if you're in here now, pop in the chat, give us a question or just a comment. Let us know that you're here. We've got some questions in here. We're gonna get through all of our questions tonight. I think that's our desire. In the practice, I feel that maybe the roles are not as separate, or you have more than one responsibility at a time. Yeah, for sure, Amy. For sure. I mean, the issue is just like any small business, and depending on even the size of the practice, they're gonna use you wherever they can, wherever they need to. Oh, I get that. I think I missed a message. Did I miss a message? Oh, okay. Thank you for sending it to me. I see it. Going back to the responsibilities. Okay. I'm gonna redo the other ones first. Okay, sorry, I'm getting back channel notes. I want to make sure we're not skipping messages. So we got Steve in the back channel, making sure we're not missing anything. All right, because last time I know it's like you guys were awesome with the questions, but we were like, oh my gosh, we didn't get through them fast enough. So let's see. I agree about the notes. It's amazing how many different places you can find notes. It's annoying. This is the problem, and I love developers. Like, I just love the mind, where people can take this idea abstractly, conceptually marry it to the gaps that they see in healthcare. The problem is that they usually are looking very specifically to solve one or two problems, yet then they come up with a solution that they tell everybody, oh, it's going to solve these other 15 problems for you. Like, not if you focused only on one or two. Like, for example, prescribing or whatever. So it's like, oh, our e-prescribing system does all these magical bells and whistles, but the documentation is super manual, right? Or, you've got EHR that's strong, yet the billing system hasn't figured out yet how to post an ERA. Like, that doesn't even compute for me. Like, why are you in healthcare if you cannot process an electronic remittance advice? And we literally, you guys, deal with systems. We deal with a system like that. The company is not the company who produced the products is not a US based company. So my belief is that they didn't understand the importance. Yet instead of responding and fixing it, it's been years and they have not. They just have not decided how to remedy the issue of not being able to ingest an 835 file. So, which is our payment, the payment file. So those of you who aren't super ingrained in the payment area yet. So, all right, going back to the responsibilities. In billing companies, are billers divided by responsibilities by doctors or by who does Dr. A, B, or who does posting, authorizations, eligibility, etc.? Good question. Tiffany, you want to answer that one?
Well, for us, we have it separated. We have a payment posting team, eligibility team, authorization team, things like that. And then we have the insurance AR team. But we have our different clients, but we don't necessarily split them up by the doctors that are in that particular practice. So right now we just have it split up as far as like the task goes, whether it's posting, insurance, AR, claims submission, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted for Tiffany to answer first because I have to give you guys my justification as to my big belief that people should not split their business by doctor. And I actually I shouldn't say never. When I first started, I did a little bit of that, but I've always had like okay, so I have two main beliefs. First thing is that people work better when they operate in their area of strength. That's the first thing. So someone who does payment posting and kills it, like flies through it, and accuracy rate is, super tight, and just all of that. That same person is not going to be the same person that's going to kill AR, that's going to follow up and be patient and be persistent and all of that, because truly, this is a very task-oriented thing. You can do it and be done with payment posting versus AR. You got to be ready to fight and continue to fight. You might see that same claim and patient over and over again. You would get frustrated very quickly if you're a payment posting mindset versus somebody who works really, really well in AR, because it's just a totally different brain. You do something and you're done. You literally post that batch, it's gone. You closed it, you're done. Now, of course, there's maybe moments where you have to pen something ends up pending because you're waiting for something, but at some point, it's closed and it's totally done. We get to that same goal ultimately with AR, but sometimes it just rears its ugly head a little bit. So that's my first thing, is area of strength is super duper important. And then the other part of it is that I saw it so frequently that billing companies bring on their teams and then they assign accounts to a person. So it's like, you've got Dr. A or Dr. B, using your example, Lee, and you've given these people a split just by practice, maybe by size, what have you. The problem is if I've given Joe Schmo over here Dr. A and Sally Sue over here Dr. B, and Sally Sue's killing it, doing great, and Joe Schmo is like calling in sick every other day, and then all of a sudden just disappears, and you're left holding the bag trying to figure out where to put Dr. A's work, right? The issue is Dr. A has suffered the entire time. The person wasn't showing up. There's, inconsistencies, whatever. So end to end, whatever responsibilities you had, it has been a bad deal for Dr. A. Poor Dr. A has been drugged through the mud. So I like the concept. I've always loved the concept of shared responsibility, because we learned when I first started into the specialty, like we picked a couple specialties and I had people that knew what they, knew the specialty. So I felt, okay, it's fine. They can manage the whole thing. But you learn quickly that not only is it slow down when they get to payment posting because they don't love payment posting, or they do payment posting because it's great, but the AR sucks, right? If you gave that one person the job, it starts to fall behind. And so it is a worrisome thing that you would give it to one person, but then you also are gambling, because really you don't have the potential to at least remedy one thing. Like if you have one person that's devoted to AR, that's their area of strength, and they have 4 or 5 clients, if that person disappears, you just have to worry about that one function, AR, needing to be replaced, versus all 4 doctors that you've given to that person not getting tended to until you replace them. It's just a fraction of the revenue cycle. Obviously important that you replace it, but it's not going to take that long of a time to kind of get them acclimated that potentially would if you brought somebody in completely fresh and you had to teach them end to end for 4 accounts. So does that make sense to you both, what I'm trying to break down? I know I went like too far in detail. I have a habit of that.
And I love that you call it area of strength. In our company, we call it zone of expertise. Mm-hmm. What is your zone
of genius is the really popular coin term, and it's so true.
Yeah.
If you don't know about it, and I'm trying to think of, I think it's called, it's basically when you get into a flow state, like when you are able to get into a flow state, it's because you're operating in your zone of genius.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think for me, we do a lot of what you say, because like I said, the one company I worked in, there were different departments. and different departments had whatever the responsibilities were, but you couldn't talk to each other. Like there was no cross training at all possible. And it was almost like holding on to knowledge. Like, you can't never fire me because I have all the knowledge that keeps this one thing afloat.
Yeah.
So I don't like that at all. Like that becomes bad business. Like you said, if Joe Smo goes away somewhere, okay, who's doing his work?
Yeah. And I totally honest, I learned the hard way the first 3 or 4 years of my company, because that happened to me. So I not like, it just, the person just was not showing up like everybody else was. And so I like to call it departmentalization, like just choosing to put people in pods where they can also work together collaboratively. Like Tanya was saying, that is such an important thing. Like, to be honest, like if you have this team, the team's divided just by client, right? There's a few things that can go on. The first thing is that when you get them together for a meeting, you're talking about so many different things that it's just exhausting, even for the billing manager, the person who's in charge, because it's like all the tasks, the entire revenue cycles, in the conversation, versus like, okay, today we're bringing together the AR team and here's the focus and the mindset, the conversation is different, the value that bring to the table. The same thing with like payment posting or folks that are working, denials too. Like you've got a totally different mind that's coming to the table. And it can be like more targeted progress, and you can still do that like if you wanted to, but again, you're talking about the same people. So if you like pull them in like to 4 meetings a week, it's going to be exhausting, not going to get a lot of done. So it's different. You have like different departments involved.
Very true.
Very good. Let me see. Bhaskar. Okay. Yay. We're going to get this right, and you have to come back so we can keep practicing, keep your name like we to get perfected. I wonder how many developers collaborate with folks that are actually using the software.
None.
Exactly. I ask the question all the time. Yeah, sometimes I wonder, she says, sometimes I wonder what in the world they were thinking with the last update. LOL. Yep, absolutely this. We have the same conversation all the time. It's like mind blowing.
Or the update that updates one thing and breaks the other thing.
Yeah. What'd you say, Tiffany?
I said they have not used their product.
Oh yeah. And then they never really look at like recommendations or take them seriously. Like once the money starts coming in, it's like, okay, that's a nice recommendation. We'll take it under consideration. Have a nice day. It's like, yeah, it's exhausting.
I love we beta tested it on whose data.
Yeah.
What did you use for that?
The beta environments where there's just developers and there are other technology folks around. Yeah. No, it's an unfortunate thing. Like I do think that, somebody, I have high hopes. Technology is there's just so many new players every day that I feel like somebody will get it right. Maybe they'll be watching this video. Software people, please call us. Billers be able to tell you, because the thing that stresses me out the most is that this is the revenue producing engine, the revenue cycle. The people in revenue cycle should really be like up on the list. Yes, the EHR functionality, super, super important. We want the providers to be running efficiently so they can focus on patients. But sometimes they spend way too much time on other added bells and whistles, and you can't get a proper interactive AR report. Like if you can't get an AR report out of the system, how are you going to be able to focus on following up and recovering revenue for the organization? It's like, okay, great. You have these really cool reminder systems, and I'm not discounting that. I think it's absolutely necessary. But it's like, you've got a two-way communication tool for patient reminders, but you haven't figured out how to put notes without having 10 areas for notes, like where there's like consistency. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Let me see. I think I scrolled too far. Where did I go? Oh yeah, yes. It's important to let people play. Yeah, to play in people's strengths. It's so true. Like, I mean, you feel better about it too. I mean, in your own, environment, you'll feel better about it. Because really, to be honest, like we've all been in that place where we've had to do that work. It's like the 10% of our day that just you never get the time to do that 10% because you hate it so much. You're like, I'll just do it tomorrow. Oh,
Tomorrow's tomorrow.
that is me in paperwork, by the way. That's why, I mean, I can kill some process development, but you give me paperwork and I'm like credentialing or otherwise, like, yeah, not my favorite. Now, I'll sign on the line and I'll review it to make sure it's accurate. Don't ask me to fill it out. It'll take me a few days. Just know that. Truth bomb. If Christina were here, she would 100% agree. She'd be like, oh, that's the problem. I'm like, yeah, I can't stand it. It's what pains me even more is when people send me like PDFs or like a scan of a PDF, like that's not a PDF that I can make into a typable form. So it's like a PDF that's an image instead of something that I could make into a typable document. I get so irritated because then I'm here typing text boxes because I'm lazy and I don't like to print it out and handwrite it. I'm like, I would say lazy. I like to leverage technology. We'll just say that. Let me see. All right. For billing companies, are the majority of the clients that you have to mostly use the doctor software than the billing company Okay. So typically, like we have our own software as well. So like Open Practice Solutions is our system, and it's like an umbrella system. So there's clients underneath it. Each one, it has their own servers. They're all separate for us. There are billing companies that have like their system has all their clients under one system. I never understood how people make sense of that. We tried to get sold, like people tried to sell us at least 3 or 4 times on big systems like that, oh, well, you can use that because we've got ways to organize the data. And I'm like, but what happens when the doctor needs to leave? Like, how do you export and not, it just sounds like painful. So what I like with OPM is like, we'll be able to, or OPS, we can use those separate databases and then they can take their database with them when they go, if they need to, or they just take out what they need or have temporary access to it or whatever, which is great. So, but we do have our own system. So in the event that the provider does not have a real functioning practice management or billing solution per se, and they only have an EHR tool or their billing solution is not up to par, we would use OPS for that. So, so yeah, we do have, let's see, what do billing companies that are mostly commonly divided into? So what do billing companies mostly are commonly? I'm maybe
it's supposed to be what are billing companies mostly divided into what departments. How we were talking about the departments earlier, I think we talked about it from the standpoint of the practice. So I believe she might be asking about companies.
Yeah. Okay.
Rightly.
Yeah. Let us know. Right. Sorry, I thought I was, I'm really tired today. So I actually thought I was just like completely confusing the words. So I hopefully didn't get that wrong. My teenage daughter actually wanted to talk to me last night. So we talked, which was great, but she kept me up late. And so I'm kind of tired today. It's like, okay, I'm excited. She wants to talk to me. Oh my gosh. It's very exciting. She's 16. You got to take it, when they want to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a 16-year-old too. If she walked in right now and said, "Mom, can we talk?"
Yeah, like I gotta go, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. It's on their time as teenagers.
Totally. It's a gift when they want to come back and actually like talk to you and not make you feel like you're just some dumb parent, Yeah. Okay, so that question.
So what are they? I think that's more of the standpoint of you have your company kind of divided. I don't have mine divided. So I'm not too sure how to answer that. I
think there's a response loading up here. Let me see. Maybe not. Maybe. Or is that just a comment from you, Steve? I'm like, was it from you? Okay, I thought it was from her. I'm like, wait, I'm confused. Lee, let us know if we didn't get it right. So I'm going to list the departments that typically exist in a billing company. If you think about it, like really from the functions, right? So looking at the revenue cycle, right? So if the software does not have an integration to pull charges from EHR, there's occasionally will be a charge posting team at the billing department. So there'll be a team that is entering charges manually or semi-manually, approving charges, things like that, attaching referrals to encounters, that kind of process. And I guess I should also mention, billing companies also will do, in some cases, do the function of eligibility and pre-certification as well. We don't perform pre-certification, but we do eligibility. So some billing companies are they might offer just a tool for the people, for practices to do it, but they won't perform services, more comprehensive services in that front area of the business. And then, I'm sorry, I totally forgot to, we also have scheduling team, but only for certain types of clients. So and that's something, again, depending upon the type of practice provider. And so like Renee, our colleague, does, he's more like an MSO, which is a management service organization. So he offers services that are like really supportive of the practice administratively. So they schedule appointments and things like that, as well as maintain referrals from other providers and all that. So that's a fairly, it just depends on how deeply involved the billing company is in the revenue cycle piece. Like, do they do things outside of the basic scope of medical billing? Because some billing companies just start at kind of charge handoff. So as soon as charges are released or whatever, whether it's done manually or electronically. So thinking of still the revenue cycle, like there's usually a claims department. In some cases, the people who manage the claims, getting them out the door, working rejections, might have shared responsibility into something else, because it really just depends on how large of an organization, right? So it might be someone's function, but like half of their day, because thankfully, most systems these days, we're billing electronically. So you're really just making sure the claims got where they were supposed to go, and then you're working rejections that come back, right? And Tiffany, stop me if I'm forgetting. I'm like literally in my mind thinking about it as I'm working through it. So payment posting is obviously a department. The denial capture process for us is a part of the payment posting, meaning they pull the denials out. But we actually have our AR team works denials and AR. So we work them in priority order. Basically, the denials that should be the first priority, because that's what I like to say is prevention, right? It's like preventative medicine. It's like trying to keep you from getting sick. You're trying to keep the claim from getting to AR. So work your denial first and then the AR. And the reason why I don't like the separation is because of that. Because usually if my responsibility is that same account and I see this person on my AR, but if there was a denial that was just received and I'm not the one receiving it, then I could be working on the same claim, and yet my counterpart, whoever's working the denial, has the reason why the claim was not processed in their hands. So you've got too much overlap in the work. So I would say it's better, my recommendation for that kind of situation is actually to split the alphabet for AR instead of doing where you have kind of too much overlap. So you would, split it up depending on how many people you have, A to Z divide by 3 or whatever. And that's the types of accounts that the people would work, not accounts, but the patient accounts alphabetically or payer wise. Those are the two main things. And payer wise can be dependent upon the software reports, because in some cases the software reports have like too much as far as like the just long list of payers and not really just a total number of patients by payer. So, okay, Bhaskar's helping us out. So yeah, it's hard, to be honest. Developers are not doctors or billers. They go by what's given by the project manager, and the project management takes it from the BA, which I don't know for sure what the BA is. But I know PM, right, is PM, right? PM is project manager. I'm like, BA, what is BA? Business analyst. Yes, maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Could be. Yeah, that's the thing is, yeah, it's done all on project basis. So, and they're working with instruction with targets that aren't really set according, really to be made adjustable in that way. It's like, okay, complete this area and you're testing it and getting back, but you're not necessarily getting feedback from the users, the user experience per se. All right. I feel like we get everybody questions. Any other last questions? Oh, Amy down here. I'm sorry. Yeah, I keep telling the software companies I want to sit beside the programmer. Dude, I actually have had the pleasure of working with teams and trying to provide insights and data, but it just only goes so far. Like they only take a certain set of information that's going to help them get their project done. Ultimately, they want to get the project to market. So, sometimes we offer insight that might seem a little bit too complex, and they can't evaluate the weight of the issue. Yay! I got it right. Awesome. So yeah, basically, I think the issue is that you end up with this headache of trying to make it to the oh yeah, I'm sorry. I saw the screen moved for me. You're trying to make it to the end of a project runway, right? You're trying to get to the end of creating that project. And so you're looking at things from this angle first. What do we need so that we put everything in place to get the project moving? So they create their timeline according to that. And so when people come in and they give this more abstract explanation, like for us in the billing world, we think we understand. We're like, oh no, this is a problem. But when we tell people who are not in the billing world, they don't understand the gravity of the issue. It's like, you'd have to explain it and expand on it to say that's factors, the way that it would impact the providers. So if it would be 20% of their revenue could be impacted if this area doesn't work, then maybe, or it could impact the potential sale of your product, might be a good way to put it, So if they could see that clearly, it would help. So yeah, I love you. You can call us Furls, Lee.
I love it.
I love you. Thank you for that. Yes, you're welcome, Liz. Appreciate you. So basically, there's eligibility verification, posting AR. Yep, so there also may be patient AR, might be split from AR insurance and patient. And then typically the patient collections department is not in a billing company or billing department. There's usually an outside company that does that third-party collection. So yeah.
And I would add claim submission to her list.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, claim submission, all the claim management pieces that just trying to get it out the door, right? Even the paper claims, somebody's function when they have to go on paper. Even when I say paper, I don't mean only physical paper, like faxing and all of that too. Still a part of the world.
Or some PIs, we still are snail mailing some PIs depending on the state.
Yes. Oh my gosh. PIs. Oh, so PIs are personal injury. And workers' comps, right, Tiff? Those sometimes are still manually
coding.
Yeah, I haven't had any of those. Just Geico for depending on the state. Right now, go mail.
Yeah.
Snail mail.
Snail mail. Oh, Geico. When are you guys going to come through? When are you going to come through, y'all? We need electronic means to get you claimed.
Geico, let's talk about Champ VA. They are a year out.
Oh. Gosh, let me see.
We'll talk about that.
Yes. Let me see, Amy. All right, we're going to take these last couple. If you guys ask questions, still put them in the comments because we will see your comments in the posting of the video. As soon as we get done, it will be posted. So if you think of anything, put it in the video still, because we want to make sure we answer questions. This is the whole purpose of this, that we get a chance to collectively get together. And those of you who are in the billing world, already, have questions, maybe trying to shift your role in or out of the practice or move to the next level. So we want to be able to help you. And people that are wanting to get into healthcare, you just get you're looking under the hood. You get a little visibility, you get to look and, try it before you buy it kind of thing while you're here with us. So you get to see our brains a little bit. Okay, Amy, so when you said that you use Open Practice Solutions, that's the software that you use when the practice doesn't do what you need it to do. Oh, okay. Then you have to transfer back information to their software. No, okay, so I don't like to do that. I don't like to run parallel systems. If I won't use their system, I will give them the option. Typically, I'm just like, you should, I don't like to suggest it because you have to understand that when somebody has a tool, they're invested in that tool. At some point, it's going to frustrate them that they're going to have to use your tool. So the potential for you keeping that client for a longer period of time is greatly reduced because they're invested in their system, unless it's something that is a hot mess that they would walk away from, and that you hear that type of dialogue from them. Otherwise, I don't like to run parallel systems. When I say parallel, like, I mean, EHR is one thing that might have a little kind of wannabe PM or billing system versus something that is a full all-in-one. It can do all the things, but we just don't like it. I don't like to run them. And typically the transferring of information only happens one directionally when it's an EHR to the PM system. So we don't send information back from open practice. Make sense? Okay, perfect, Liz. I'll look for it. Is that simply lovely? I like it. I like it. So AR consultant from Alabama. I love it. Welcome. We're excited to have you here. So we are here now every Wednesday night at 7:30. It's night for us on this coast if you're on the West Coast. So at 7:30 p.m. is when we start Eastern time. And so it is 8:45 for us, so we will have to turn in, or at least for us, I say Tiffany and I. Tanya is actually Central, so she's still got an hour on us. So
I still have daylight.
Do you really? Oh no, it's dark.
Yeah.
That's why I need to get up and close my curtains because literally the window is right here and I have this bright light because it was daylight when we started. And now people, I'm sure, are walking by looking at me scream at my computer. So it's one of those bizarre things. So Liz, she's looking for you. You were looking for us. I love it. So it's funny. We just made the switch this week because you guys voted on the Facebook group. So keep voting on the Facebook group if you guys want to let us know, or even like I said, on the YouTube community page. If you haven't joined Facebook group or you're not a Facebooker, on the YouTube community page, there is also a poll on there. I'm probably going to retire it soon, and then I'll do a new one for whatever the next live session or idea that comes up. And if you guys want us to talk about something in particular, you can always put that information in the comments of the videos, any video, because we see all of them, and we'll put that on our list. And if it's something that we're like, oh yeah, this ties in beautifully, like last week, I think there was a couple of questions that came in from folks that it kind of weaved into the conversation. So that's absolutely something we can do, and we'd love to make that happen. So yes, so Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, join us next week. And like I said, let us know if there's something that you want us to talk about in particular. Now, I'm sorry, let me tell you, next week we have the conversation we spoke about like a couple of weeks ago, which is life as a medical biller and medical coder, like married together. We have that conversation next week. So Carrie is going to join us here next week, and she's going to talk about her life and the way that she makes it work. I told you guys that, it's a hard world, so I can't give you insight into it because for me, I'm like, no. I do not want to be a coder. I'm a biller, right? Yeah, Tiffany, I didn't ask your perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm not a coder. Nope. I like finding my insurances for that AR money, but not going to be in a book.
Yep. That is exactly the issue. I feel like it's a totally different world. You have to and you can segment it, but you got to to do both equally. Otherwise, like you said earlier, you're not going to be in your zone of genius, and you're going to hate that part of your day. You'll be like, I don't want to call an insurance again. Yeah. Doing a little temper tantrum. So next week, medical biller and medical coder in one role. So join us next week, guys. Thank you so much. You guys hang on with me, okay? Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.